All right, a couple days later than normal, but just as smiley and full of sunshine and rainbows, it is a Mike Giardi, not Monday, Wednesday on the Pats Interference Podcast, part of the Yoked, Yearning, and Yare, Y-A-R-E, CLNS Media Network. Look it up.
When we go yoked, are we talking about this?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Just
I gotta work on that. The end of the season was not kind to me.
Yeah. Neither am I, or neither to me. Well,
I know what you meant.
It's Wednesday afternoon. I still am catching up on sleep if the last 15 seconds wasn't evident of that. We're not here to talk about that, though. You and I finally have our film notes. Back from the West Coast, back having watched the game. I finished my second rewatch, second and a half today. You've done this now about the same amount of times?
Yeah.
Okay. Everyone knows what happened in the Super Bowl, so we're not here for the big picture explanation. This is going to be the same nitty-gritty stuff you normally get on a Monday, with a little bit of a spin ahead, because this got my wheels turning maybe through the second and a half rewatch of like, and they really need this next month. They really need that come the draft. So that's going to follow later, plus our standard dad pod. And let me have it. Let me ask you, though, off the top, because I like this question after big games. Time passes, perspective picks up. Had your view of the Super Bowl change over the last 72 hours?
Not really. I felt in the moment it was an ass kicking, and that's unfortunate based on the season that they had, right? Where we talked about they'd never got their ass kicked at any point during the year. You know, there might have been a quarter here or a half there, but it was never that full on thing. And that was their worst game. I don't even think it was, I hate the phrase, but I don't think anything was close in terms of how that played. What I was surprised, and we'll get into it, is a little bit of some of the defensive stuff that I thought when I was watching the game in person, I'm like, they're giving them a chance. They're doing all they can. Like, this is a really valiant effort. And then when I went back and watched, and I was like, it wasn't nearly good enough. And that has nothing to do with what was happening on the other side of the ball offensively. It just, they've been better. They've been better the entire postseason, and they weren't on all fronts, basically, in the game on Sunday.
I agree with that. I also realized just how big the gap was between them and Seattle, who I called historically good by DVOA. Their defense, number one this, number one that, was even bigger than I knew. And maybe I'd spent too much time watching those two Rams games, looking for answers that the Patriots would hunt. And, Stretch has the connections to McVay last year. And you've got Nick Caley was on, there are connections going back and forth. Thomas Brown was on the McVay staff. That's probably the best example. 4 years ago, not going like, obviously there's no Puka, but Matthew Stafford is still at a much higher level than Drake is as quarterback. And aside from that, the layers of failures offensively, this was not just the pass protection game. It wasn't just the Drake Maye game or Josh McDaniels or even Doug Marrone. The receivers authored a decent chapter in this book of just widespread failures that then led to, let me ask you this, the most fraudulent stat line I've ever seen in any game of a player. Would you believe me if I told you Drake Maye was 27 of 43 for 295 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a pair of picks?
Nope. What was it? 48 yards after 3 quarters? What was the number? The number or 70 or something. The number was outrageous. And then when I saw the final stat line, I was like, what?
Yeah. That's how my view of the game changed after about 72 minutes when I got this packet from the locker room after we interviewed a bunch of sad players. I'm like, oh, thank you very much from Team PR. It was like, oh my God, they have a misprint on the Super Bowl box score. Yeah. Anyway, it was a big gap. Look, that's on me for underestimating this. And again, I've explained why I picked the Patriots, and I thought the QB regression in both ways with Darnold and Maye after the postseason they had both respectively had would flip and help the Patriots. But this was, as you tried not to say, but I will now, not close, and they deserved the result that they got. There's also a lot of weirdness in this game that you just wonder if they play this over again. Like, I'm sure Seattle would get to the same score. I just don't know if they would take the same route to get there. But let's dive into what do people miss before we spin ahead to the offseason, because I got some big spicy takes for this offseason, and I'm excited to test them out on you. But offensively, I said it was multi-layered.
Yeah.
You could start at the top. You could start at the bottom. You could start in the middle. What was your biggest problem with this performance?
I mean, so I wrote it after the fact. There was like a systematic failure, and it's to your point. It was at all levels. You can't sit there and say, "Oh, it was." And I'm not. This is not a defense of anybody. but like obviously the quarterback, he gets too much credit when they win and too much blame when they lose. That's the position. Players talk to me about that after the game, like, hey, that's just the way, that's life. But like, there's a lot on his plate, but there's a lot on all of us, and we all failed. And that was the thing to me. It was just like, well, they didn't run it very well. They couldn't pass protect very well. The quarterback wasn't as accurate as he needed to be. He wasn't making the best decisions as possible. Trevion Henderson left yards on the field again. And then the receivers weren't getting open or misreading plays and causing major problems for their quarterback. There's been a big debate about the lack of adjustments. I don't know how you feel about this. And again, not a defense of Vrabel, McDaniels, etc. I think that when they looked at this game 2 weeks ago and how they built the plan, there was a conservative nature to how they wanted to play, because I think they felt like they were going to get Sam Darnold multiple times. And Sam tried. He put a few out there for him. They just didn't take advantage. And that helped sort of, I don't know, that swung the game a little bit in their direction. So I just don't know. Like, I heard a lot about, like, oh, screens. This team is a terrible screen team all year long. Why all of a sudden, against the fastest defense in the league, or one of the fastest defenses in the league, and one of the best, or if not the very best, against the quick game in the league, why all of a sudden was something you couldn't do well for 20 weeks, all of a sudden going to pop in week 21 or 22, whatever this is. So I just think truly it comes down to systematic failure. Like the red light went off on all these places and there was no way to reset it.
Yeah, look, whenever things are going badly offensively in a game and people are tweeting, the name of the offensive coordinator is going to come up.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's completely deserved. Other times it's not. More often than not, it's somewhere in between. I was somewhere in between and defended McDaniels at halftime, being like, hey, they're dialing up a lot of different stuff. Here are the other things they could do in the second half. They didn't really get to any of them. Empty, jumbo stuff, quarterback run game, some space plays for Trevion Henderson. Maybe they were on Twitter, because I also asked for them to put him at kick return, being like, hey, if you're not worried about injury because he's not playing on offense, maybe put him where he scored a touchdown in his first freaking game in the preseason. But setting that aside, it was just how Seattle was such a step ahead, like from the get-go. And that's not playing the result of like, oh, well, they got through in an unblocked blitz. It was they blitzed Maye early, toy with his internal clock. They're attacking the exact protections that they expected. Back off of the blitz when the Patriots, who started conservative, as you're absolutely spot on with that, then kind of further turtle into how they want to play, because you do have to concede some stuff going into these game plans. You're not going to be able to do, a deep passing game against the league's best deep pass defense, or run the ball down the throat of the best run defense in the league. You need to do enough there. And I thought they almost conceded too much off the top. So then when you realize you're already on your heels for a little bit, and Maye specifically is the one where this manifested the most, then you're like almost out of options before you get going. And to me, that was the whole nature of McDaniels was trying to play catch up, but he didn't even play catch up in a way that was like, oh, I've got a different gear in this car. It was still just trying to mosey around and drive and neutral, and like, there's a nitro button staring at him. He just doesn't want to press it.
Yeah, and I think we talked, you and I, at halftime, like, what do you do? And we're both kind of like, well, they ran one snap of the jumbo, like maybe lean into that and see if you can scratch out something on the opening drive. Or the other thing was go empty and let him identify what's happening across the field and get rid of the ball quick. And again, they're very good against the quick game, and you're not very good in the quick game, but it was just something different. And I guess if you want to really, that's probably my biggest beef with McDaniel, is how things went in the second half, or how they started things in the second half. And then again, they started throwing all kinds of stuff in the fourth quarter when, let's face it, the level of
game is at hand.
Yeah. Like we had a couple moments you're like, maybe, but even that was fool's gold.
The start of that second half, incomplete back shoulder wheel route to Pop Douglas, which was trying to get away from some of the brackets that Seattle had over the slot, which they do a good job of, and forces those harder throws. It was incomplete. You had,
and wait, quickly, Eamon Worry on that play, like, all kinds of talk about his ankle, and maybe he wasn't as disruptive as he's been in the previous 10 weeks, but like, that was like, I don't even know. That was like the big cat and the little cat playing a game there, like that was the tiger versus the Siamese cat. Like, it just, you're like back shoulder, but even then, like he's so long, it was like he had to put it even. It just it wasn't happening.
Well, you then get a jet sweep to Trayvon Henderson.
Yep.
I'm like, okay, space plays for guys who are just going to create yards on their own because the game plan. I just look and it was just too hard. Like they were a step behind and everything was in isolation and it was one-on-ones and you have to win those. Don't get me wrong, but that is inviting a defense that's faster, more talented than you, and frankly more sound, just to come in and make themselves at home. Incompletion to Booty, who gets ridden out of bounds by Josh Jobe. Next drive is another 3-and-out, toss left to Henderson, middle for Trayvon Henderson, and then an incomplete cross to Pop Douglas where Drake Maye just misses the throw. And that was a 3rd and 1, and then they punt on the 4th and 1. So even Vrabel's got a hand in this. Not to mention the 2-point conversion at the end that they did not attempt down 19-6 and should have. But setting that aside, to get back to the original or the last point I made, again, when you have a talent deficit, coaching matters more. You have to manufacture more opportunities, cleaner looks than you otherwise would. Josh Dobbs told me after the game, as soon as Seattle made it a one-on-one game, we needed to win matchups, and we just didn't. They should have known that. Talk about conceding things that we don't want to get into that world, and they did. And it's most obvious on 3rd and long. But it's also invited when you're playing a lot of 11 personnel from the get-go and 12 personnel, where Austin Hooper, in a clip that our pal Michael Hurley tweeted and Nate Tice kind of corrected, ran this awful corner route. So, forget that Austin Hooper is not scaring anybody, but he's also just not doing his job. I just wanted something more, whether it was the personnel piece, more motion, empty stuff, put it in Drake's hands with the quarterback run game. There was just kind of running the game that Seattle would have wanted. They were running towards that as opposed to running to some other solutions when obviously through this whole first half, mostly 11 personnel. Otherwise it was 12 aside from the one jumbo snap and a couple Jack Westover snaps or whatever. None of it was working. And you didn't really see much different in the second half.
I love the point about one-on-ones, and it's something that I wrote about in the notebook heading into the game and talking to people around the league, and the idea that you're gonna need your guys in space, and in particular they were pointing at Henderson, right? Like there's gonna be some plays where Henderson's gonna be one-on-one, and he just needs to win that, and it didn't happen. But across the board, it didn't happen, and this goes back to the thing that we talked about as we went further in the playoffs, and some of the things that we talked about during the course of the year about their struggles against man coverage or like the inability to separate and to win that way. And even when a team is playing heavy zone, there's the match aspect of it. And there are points where it's man, even though it's zone, and you have to win there. And they couldn't win. The Jobe play that you're talking about, Kayshawn he beat him off the line of scrimmage. I'm talking Jobe did. And then he beat him at the top of the route. And then he beat him when the ball was in the air. It was like strike 1, strike 2, strike 3. And it was like, similar to the Patrick Surtain bat away in the AFC Championship game when they tried to deep early and he was just kind of like disdainfully knocked the ball down.
Child pass breakup.
Yeah, that's kind of how I felt about Jobe on that play. It's like, I just kicked your ass every which way, and now there's the ball. And I'm just like, get that. Don't even come over here. Don't even try that. So when you can't win like that, this is where I think you and I are, in terms of this is the thing that gets your wheels turning even more about things that need to happen in the offseason. And that's one of the things that just you got to find, whether it's more speed or playmaking ability. That's I don't know if it's number one, but it's up there.
Explosion.
Yes. It can't just be Trevion Henderson. You can't just hope that a guy who has bad vision is going to be your explosive player, or that Kyle Williams, because he showed us a couple flashes over the course of a 21-week season that he's automatically going to be that guy. That's kind of a wish and a prayer. It's not anything that's come to real fruition, at least not consistently.
Going back to the point about man-to-man, that was another example early where Seattle shows more man than they typically play and then backs away from it.
Yep.
So you've got the alternate man coverage, some of the blitz stuff, combined with some cover zero, which they showed earlier than they normally play, period. And Patriots go, okay, it's going to be that kind of game. Pivot. And the Seahawks are already a step ahead there. So, it's not only just the one-on-ones that were forced upon them, and that's where you don't want to live. It's that when you start to catch up to those type of ways that Seattle's trying to put you there with their blitz pressure and their man coverage, they're already on to something new and found out that probably the best way to affect Maye and just play defense was rush forward, because that was their biggest advantage all along. However, that brings me to the protection point because we have to talk about this.
Yes.
And we'll get to Will Campbell a little bit later, more specifically. But this is where coaching and the one-on-one stuff really merged as just a giant loss for the Patriots, who had Maye under pressure. Let's see, I had this about 44% of the time.
Yep.
And that's with Seattle blitzing 7 or 8 times total.
Yeah, I had 8 and 53 dropbacks, which is not, I mean, it's nothing. Just think about what you did in the first half where Darnold 24 dropbacks, 23 dropbacks, and you blitzed them 59% of the time. Like, good God, right? But again, speaks to a thing we've talked about a million times, Andrew, right? Like, they couldn't, Patriots, for the better part of the year, 90% couldn't generate pressure with 4. They needed extra bodies when Seattle could easily just turn around and show you, like, dude, when you can win with 4 and cover with 7, I mean, it's a game changer.
Seattle's defense was both an exercise in like really clever minutia and the big picture points that the guy at the Super Bowl party you don't want to talk to because he's saying things like, yeah, well, you want to stop the run with 2 high. Yeah. You know, you want to run. If you get pressure with 4, they'll be fine. Thank you. Yeah. Captain Obvious with Captain Morgan. Settle down. Like we all get it. But it's true. I mean, look, you do those things. It's just not very insightful. It was just that's exactly what they did and how they won. Let me wrap on the protection point, though, because not only is Leonard Williams a mismatch, as is apparently Riley Mills for Jared Wilson, and we saw everything that happened with Nwosu and Will Campbell. The Seahawks really got after 2 basic protection schemes that the Patriots used and that were exploited in the first and fourth quarters. And you see this other places, and I looked at it myself and completely concur. Number 1 was on the first throwaway that Maye had at the end of his first drive. Seattle goes in a diamond, 5 down front, 1 defender over every single offensive lineman, including someone head up over the center, which to the Patriots, their response is, okay, we go 5 out. Everyone get the guy who's basically in front of you. They also aligned 2 defenders on each edge, meaning 1 on each side. And what happened at the snap was Seattle dropped the defensive tackles who had occupied the interior offensive line. Then you have 4 rushers against 1 tackle on each side, and then the running back, meaning that's a numbers game, and you're losing it. And they did, because Witherspoon came free. That was 1 blitz. The other protection involved Stevenson being aligned opposite Hunter Henry as the tight end. And this is where they would send the double B gap pressure to Stevenson's side, which was another way, especially when the Patriots slid the protection, meaning the center, Garrett Bradbury, went left, in this case, towards Hunter Henry. Mm-hmm. You had 2 linemen to his right and then Stevenson. So you'd have 2 down linemen taking the Patriots offensive guard and tackle, this case, Mike Onwenu and Morgan Moses, and then 2 blitzers coming at Ramondre Stevenson. And you would think after the first couple of drives, you might have a conversation about when we're in this protection, look out for this as not a very high blitz team. Even if they had the conversation, it didn't work. And that's the adjustment piece more than the tells, which I frankly couldn't find. And we could talk about one thing that maybe happened. But as far as the stances and whatever Witherspoon was talking about after the game, which only pertained to pass protections and pass set, it wasn't about the run game. That to me was an issue. That's an issue on McDaniels and Doug Marrone and Drake Maye, who slid the protection in the wrong direction on a snap, on the snap where he had his pick 6 forced fumble, whatever it was. That's the stuff where you go, where was the adjustment? It's not the second half sucks and the coaching is to blame. And this is what I'm going to say. They're in the same protections, getting exploited by the same blitz pass over and over again. That's a problem and a big reason why you lost and fell in a big deficit to begin with.
Yeah. And you combine that with a quarterback who, for the entire year, you think about the sacks that he was responsible for, right? When we go to this thing, when you say, oh, it's sacks, he has he's a high rate of creating his own issues. And that's part of what makes him great, right? The ability to sort of create a little longer, hold a little longer, make big plays. But at the same time, like, there are times where, dude, you just got to get rid of the ball. You got it quick, whatever, get down, whatever it's got to be.
That sounded like you were starting to say a big sack guy, and instead you danced around with he has a high rate of making the mistakes as opposed to big sack guy.
I did catch myself there, and I considering although I did sleep like a boss last night, but considering the lack of sleep, as I never adjusted to West Coast time, good job by me, by the way, while I was out there. I think that was a good audible by me. I don't know that even in my.
I'm sorry, my immaturity interrupted. You're
No,
making
no,
a good point, but I could
it's
see the
totally
wheel
fine.
stopping and then turning again.
I want to. We didn't talk about Doug Marrone very much this year, and I don't know if that was because the line performed better, whatever. I don't know what the reasons were, but I did think as I rewatched the game, and then sort of to the totality of the postseason, and granted, as we've talked, the defenses that they played were significantly more difficult. They went through this gauntlet defensively. But then you look at next year's schedule too, and you look at some of the game, like it's a challenge. And I wondered, did we not talk about them enough? And did that group as a whole improve as the year went on? Or did they plateau somewhere in, say, December and fell off thereafter? And I don't fully know the answer to that. I know there's some injury stuff that you can't just dismiss. Will coming back and playing on the MCL, which we told people when it happened, this would be a challenge for him. It wasn't going to be easy. Other people oh, he ducked surgery. He didn't have ACL. Well, he still may end up having to have something done. You know what I mean? Like, so.
And tore it then.
Right.
Torn ligament stuff that came out.
I don't know why that became new news.
Was not.
I don't know why do we call grade 3 sprains? Why don't we just call them tears? Because he had a grade 3 sprain, which we talked about on the podcast after it happened, which was reported multiple places, right? We had this. And yesterday, Tuesday, it became like this big news that I tore my ligament. Yeah, no shit. No shit, you tore a ligament. We talked about it. I don't know why, whatever. It's
a good job by you passing the buck to the medical community, because they named it. Yes. And they call it a grade 3 sprain when it's actually a tear.
It's a tear. It's the high ankle sprain thing. The high ankle sprain is nasty. It's not a sprain. You things get snapped. It's bad. That's really bad. People make it sound like, high ankle's worse than low ankle, but like you can come back from that. No, sometimes you're actually better off like snapping your ankle, period. Like, so I don't know. Anyway, that annoyed me. But bottom line is, I don't know the full answer to it. But my inclination, based on the last 6-7 weeks of football, is that they didn't get better; they got worse. And I don't think that's strictly a talent thing. I think that might be some coaching aspect to it as well. And we because they were scoring a lot of points, we never really delved into that conversation. But they became a liability, a problem for this offense.
So. I think it's a case-by-case basis. Mike Onwenu definitely got better in the second half of the season.
Yes.
I think Will Campbell got a little bit better from where we saw him in the opener. And second week he was good, but like Myles Garrett game after the Myles Garrett game, he's Myles Garrett. I think he was good. Bradbury had a better season than I expected, but the point about Marrone is a good one. And let's just do the Campbell thing now, because he's become the face of all the Patriots pass protection issues that happened in the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
I had him down for 8 pressures. How about you?
I had him for 10.
Okay. So whatever the number is, it's not 14.
No.
And there's the part that is an issue where the narrative gets set before the facts were able to jump in. And then everyone just runs with the first thing that they heard, because nowadays that constitutes just the truth, I guess.
Yep.
The truth is every offensive lineman allowed multiple pressures. 4 of them gave up sacks. Mm-hmm. And so when I think about who was worse, the answer is Will Campbell. Okay, what do I care about next? The game's over. They're on to next season. How worried am I about Will Campbell? He is not atop my list of future concerns for this offensive line. Number 1 is Doug Marrone for me. Because when I see and hear future Hall of Fame potentially offensive linemen, or at least all pros and former Pro Bowlers, Teron Armstead and Mitch Schwartz, posting, explaining in great detail, here are the issues. They're technical. He's never going to be a dominant player. You and I were also not picking Will Campbell. So as you hear this as a defense, no. I would have taken Armand Membu, okay? This is not my guy. What I'm doing is explaining to you what was explained to me, that if he anchors his feet when he's meeting a bull rush, as opposed to going backwards, just as if you were getting into a fight with someone while you were pacing backwards, he'd have a better time. If he times his punches better, he'll be better off. And it's just not happening.
If he times his punches at all. And that if you go back and watch that game, there were times you're like, you're just catching. You're not you guys talk about that all the time. Offensive linemen, you've had this discussion. I have, like, a lot of guys, like, hey, run game, because we get to be aggressive. You get to go forward. You get to smash them. You don't have to wait and protect. But as the league has evolved and it's so heavy pass, offensive linemen have combated that, right, by using their hands more and being more physical. And, like, I don't have to be on the receiving end the entire time. And he was on the receiving end a bunch, not just in this game, but through the entirety of the postseason. And it is true. It's a technical, like, use your friggin' hands. And who's overseeing that? It's Kugler. It's Marone. Who's the third guy? Why am I missing? Jason Hotem. So, like, did you guys not see it? Did you tell him and he's not doing it? There's some sort of breakdown there. And that's, to your point, like that, but that falls on the offensive line coach. And I'll just take you back to when they hired him. And I remember hearing from people in the league literally like 10 minutes after he got hired being like, it wasn't very good in his last couple stops. And there wasn't a lot of teaching going on in his last couple stops. It was, well, these guys are veterans. They know what they're doing. But the kids, they're on their own. And the kids sucked. Trevor Penning, who it just may turn out he's just not a good football player, right? But, like, he was a first-round pick, and it's just like some of that breakdown. Did we see some of that breakdown here?
Well, and New Orleans' offensive line, which is the example you just gave with Penning, got better after he left. Which, again, this is not to dump all of the problems in the Super Bowl at Doug Marone's feet. It's just to say that the one kid that everyone wants to talk about, who's 22 years old and facing good competition and had a bad game, and that's his fault. Let's not have that get lost here. Right. Is being coached by someone who, over the course of this entire season, is either not seeing or seeing and not fixing the technical issues that kind of underpin these struggles. And then in addition to that, where these protections that we just outlined get exploited in the first quarter, in the fourth quarter, on the pick six, on sacks, there needed to be a conversation or better execution. Either way, both of those come back to coaching. And that, to me, I trust Will Campbell will get better in year two. I trust that Will Campbell, as an elite athlete, will be fine at left tackle because he was fine most of the season. Mm-hmm. Then he has a serious knee injury. The knee injury is not to blame for him being bad against the Chargers, struggling with Will Anderson. Might have something to do with him being better in the AFC Championship game, and he said he felt like himself. But he was fully healthy as you could be, really, given that injury in the Super Bowl. Not on the injury report, fully practiced. Don't want to hear about the knee. It stunk. And it was for issues where he's getting bull rushed right away.
Yeah.
And that's always been the tell with him. What can they do to fix that approach? It's on coaching and maybe a different coach next season. We'll scale 1 to 10. The Will Campbell future concern, though. Where are you?
So this may surprise people because I seem to be one of the faces of the anti-Will Campbell movement. But I think, as you've heard me talk in this podcast over the course of the year, I thought he was fine. I thought there were points where he was pretty good, like not great, certainly not measuring up to some of these awful grades that, not awful. They were great grades he got from PFF for stretches of the season where we'd be like, were they watching the same game we were? I was always of the belief that that he was going to get multiple years to be the left tackle. So when Mike Vrabel said on Tuesday, he's my left tackle, we're not moving him, not surprised. Don't think there are any real options anyway in free agency, but I think this was a multiple year commitment to him. And if next year, if he's still having the same issues and maybe it's more pronounced, if you will, maybe we're not having that 10, 11 game stretch where you're like, pretty good, not bad. He may never be an all pro. He may never be a pro bowler, but we can live with this. He might be the 15th best left tackle, and that we can work with that because we like the intangibles that he brings to the table, the toughness, beloved teammate, all that stuff. And maybe then if it goes badly in year two, maybe that's when you consider, okay, maybe it might be time to try him at guard. But I never thought that this was a quick fix, and I never thought that Mike Vrabel was going to sit there on Tuesday and be like, we're going to explore all options. I didn't. They drafted him number 4. They're going to give him a chance. And there were moments that make you think, he could do this. Again, as we discussed pre-draft, there's a reason why guys with this arm length aren't all pros and haven't been all pros at that position for however many years they went back on it, 25, 30 years. But he can still be a good player. He's still going to be one of your best 5. So yeah, that's where I am with Will Campbell. I think it's a big offseason for him to your, he's got to get better. We've got to see that. You got to be stronger, and the technique's got to improve. And I trust that Vrabel might take charge of that and just say, this is what you need to do. And when I see you in 10 weeks, I want to see X, Y, and Z. And then we're going to work on A, B, and C while, we're here for the period OTAs.
Did you give me a number?
No, I talked around it.
Scale 1 to 10 is other.
10 being the worst?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'd stick him in the middle. 4.5, 5.
I'm at a 4.
Okay.
And I sit and wonder sometimes, because I think my reflex with some of these stories that mushroom cloud and balloon very quickly, it kind of dismisses like exactly that. It's hot air, it's radio fodder, it's social media wildfire, and it goes up. And again, I'm not dismissing what I saw as 8 pressures, including a sack. You saw as 10 pressures in the Super Bowl. Granted, 3 of them I had in the first 3 quarters. So a lot of this was garbage time, where if we're going to dismiss the 200 whatever yards Drake Maye had in the most fraudulent stat line in Super Bowl history, I'm not going to give the full weight of 8 pressures to Will Campbell. But the point is, I sat with this and just went, no, I'm right. I'm not slow playing this or slow to react to this in a way that has everyone spun up, in the way that sometimes with stories I can be. I absolutely slow to jump on things. I think this has spun out of control based on the recency bias of this, and also the it's not the bookend effect, but it's basically, the things that we see first and last are those that tend to often stick in memory. Right. It's not what happens in between. His first snap, he gets bull rushed by Nwosu. At the very end of that game, as I just detailed, 5 pressures at least in the fourth quarter. That sticks in our memory. What happened in the Super Bowl? Will Campbell got treated like an infant, had been dropped in the middle of an NFL game, and that's what it looked like. The larger sample speaks to me. I said this last episode. There are fixes to be made. If he repeats this playoff performance, however, next season, then I'm willing to entertain the conversation about a position change. But shocker, the top 5 pick, who played well most of the year relative to the historic comps for rookie offensive tackles, is going to stay put, according to his head coach, who loves him like a love child.
Baby Bjorn. We never saw that. We never saw that
T-shirt. I need the T-shirt. I need the T-shirt. Yeah. And look, we'll have other criticisms of Will Campbell not talking after games. And I get having the self-awareness. 22 is impressive. To not say something you would regret. Their rules are speak for yourself. He didn't do that. Like Doug Hyde pointed this out to me as we were talking about it on Tuesday back at the stadium. Other people had to speak for him. So it's not like, oh, you have to talk to the media. You do according to the NFL, not because of me or you. But it also leaves your teammates in a bad spot of having to talk about you because you're not there. Why not? Your choice.
Yeah, and he was, and just quickly on that, like, I'm not going to make a mountain out of a molehill.
No,
but he was a multi-time offender this year on that front, and so like, it's not great. The fact that he did come out Tuesday and, hey, this is my process and this is why. Like, there's a maturity thing. I think he's fairly mature for that age. Like, we've dealt with some of these guys like Keyshawn, who obviously came a long way this past year, where you're like, that dude is really, really immature. Christian Barmore, I think, is really, really immature. Like, he did some things that were immature. The fact that he could own it here in the last moment is a good sign. And, he's going to continue to grow, not just as a player, you hope, but as a human being. So, just, I don't want to let it, I don't, some people wrote it off like, oh, it's no big deal. It's like, no, it is kind of, to what you said. It's this coach, especially, speak for yourself. And people had to ask other offensive linemen about Will Campbell and his performance, because when we got down to the locker room after the game, we had the stat burning in our heads, 14.5 pressures or whatever it was from Next Gen. Like, whether,
which was bogus.
We never got that, but that was out there. So you're like, I haven't looked at the tape, but we knew it wasn't good. And yeah, other players had to speak for him, and that's not what they want.
We got to get a little faster here, but we did not mention Stefon Diggs. What do you got on him?
Disappearing act. There was one play in the game where, I mean, at this point, I want to say it was early third quarter. He was running an over route. Maye's eyes left the field. He was looking at the rush again, which was a common problem in this game. And Witherspoon, I think, screwed it up on the backside, and he came wide open. Like, it would have been I don't know if it was the touchdown because he doesn't have that speed, but it was going to be a 40-yard play probably at the minimum. But otherwise, like, nowhere to be found. And quite frankly, the entirety of the postseason, nowhere to be found. And as I wrote afterwards, I think we saw a 32-year-old wide receiver, and he had a remarkable season. Like, I'm not going to come back from the ACL 9 months after the fact and catch whatever it was, 90 balls or whatever the number was. Like, pretty friggin' impressive, but also there's a cap on who he is. And when we talk about being explosive in the pass game, it's another area where you're just going to have to look and say, do we bring him back at that number? I'm saying I wouldn't, but you have to do something else at that position, and you have to get better at that position. Otherwise, you might have to just say, okay, we couldn't do it. He's got to come back because we don't have anything else.
I'm going to save my thoughts on the offseason for a little bit later. But to your point, he had 110 receiving yards in 4 postseason games. There were 2 players who lost in the wild card round that finished with more receiving yards than he did. Romeo Doubs and Jalen Coker. Not great.
Romeo Doubs, by the way, probably a free agent.
Oh, interesting. Interesting. Where did he play? Oh, the Packers? Is that where
yes.
Elliott Wolf spent a long time?
Yeah, I think there's some relationships there, maybe.
Interesting. Also former draft crush, so
Ooh.
I'm gonna score 1 for me 4 years later if that happens. Look, we're gonna talk about
right again.
And then finally the offseason. But first, I gotta let the people know. I know football season's over. We don't have any more picks of the week for you, though we hit on a lot in the Super Bowl. What you can do at home as the Celtics play the rest of their schedule, Tatum comes back. If you think Jason Tatum is going to go and be on fire, or if you think that David Pastrnak is going to score a bunch of goals, I'm telling you, you might as well win money while you do it. And do that at Prizepicks, America's best place to win money while you watch sports. This is how easy it is. You pick your players, all of them come with a stat. You go more than or less than. You don't have to be forced into any kind of stat, any kind of player. It's up to you, and it could be across basketball, hockey, or whatever your sport is. You just have to download the Prizepicks app, pick 2 to 6 players, lock them in the lineup, more than, less than. Sometimes they even let you change the number. And if you hit early, they let you have early payouts. 3-player lineup, first 2 hit, you want to get out of there, boom, take your cash. Not a problem, but only if you download the Prizepicks app today and use code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prizepicks, it's good to be right. Defensively, I didn't feel as right as I once thought I did rewatching this game.
Yeah.
That it was, it was a winning effort. They absolutely could have won the way that they had played, but it was not as dominant as the Seahawks having a 33% success rate. You thought we were going to get through the episode without a success rate. There's a success rate.
I would have been disappointed if you didn't drop a success rate on us.
Good. It didn't feel quite as dominant in kind of the details when you look at a number like that.
Yeah, and I think we talked and we went into this thing, and I thought, like, one of the reasons I was confident that they were going to win the football game was I thought they were going to kick ass on the interior of the Seattle offensive line. I loved the matchup of Williams and Barmore, and then the next wave of Durden and Tonga up against Bradford and Gray Zabel, who I love as a player, but like he got hurt in week 11 and wasn't the same player. I think their center is merely average, if not even maybe a touch below average. Those guys didn't eat nearly enough. Williams had a sack and a couple pressures. Barmore was completely ineffective as a pass rusher. Durden, who has shown up pretty much every week that he's been in the lineup, I got nothing from him. I didn't. There wasn't anything. There was no Corey Durden. Like, there's Corey Durden. Like, there's the guy that I saw here. Tonga, same thing. And like, to me, the fact that their interior offensive line was able to not only hold up, but have success against you. And then overall, their offensive line sort of controlled the game in many aspects was a surprise to me. And when I went back and rewatched again, I'm like, to your point, it was good enough to win, probably, but it wasn't nearly what it needed to be. And I found a lot more negatives out of that group and some of their play than I certainly did watching real time, when I thought, like, man, the offense is just leaving the defense out to dry. I didn't feel that way after rewatching the game.
Before I forget, the tell. I mentioned I didn't really see anything in terms of the sets and the way Witherspoon was talking. I think it was more about, hey, when you approach with a certain rush, they'll react in a way that we can then take advantage of. And if I had to guess, it's not as much about the snap alignment, or 3-point stance, 2-point stance. It's like with speed, they're immediately into kind of vertical sets and giving up space. And you saw Witherspoon cut across Will Campbell's face for one of his pressures on a blitz. That to me might be more of what he's talking about. The tell, though, that I and others saw, including our pal Taylor Kyles at CLNS, it's not the clapping as much as Maye's cadence before he would take the snap and then clap and then take the snap. Get very consistent, like consistent, bordering on predictable. And you saw this become really problematic in the second half on those blitzes. Witherspoon again comes up. Zoom. As soon as he sees it, knee comes up, clap, boom. Like there was, and I know they had to hurry up. Don't get me wrong, but the consistency there, which you don't see from those veteran quarterbacks who are trying to catch defenses off guard and catch guys out of gaps, it wasn't there. It was too predictable, and I think that helps Seattle a little bit. Defensively, yeah. Look, I'm with you. The plan was pretty simple for a lot of window dressing around different blitzes, and you had different fronts as you're bouncing between a 5 down to control their outside zone game, and then you're going 4 down and you're bringing guys down. They blitzed Sam Darnold on more than half his dropbacks. Christian Gonzalez shadowed JSN, did a really good job, I thought. And this wasn't your typical shadow in terms of it's straight man-to-man everywhere he goes. This was, we'll bump assignments. This will be some zone that we drop into after you shadow and follow. Sometimes you don't even follow them. But they did a really nice job around that, and then played some single high coverages to kind of get into the box where they were playing mostly base defense, including later some goal line, which is the 3 DBs, which you noted in real time and got burned with. But that was really the plan, and I thought it was the right plan. The issue was PFF had this at 18 missed tackles. That seemed high to me, but the screws were just a little bit looser than normal. And when you have that combined with Milton Williams as the only guy that got consistent one-on-one pressure, you talk about winning one-on-ones. How often did the Patriots do that? Not often. That's why they lost the game. That was a big problem because the run defense, look, I know Kenneth Walker had 135 yards and the Seahawks had 141. At the risk of sounding like a former Patriots head coach, if you just take out the 30-yard run and then the 29-yard run, it was actually only 3.7 yards a carry. So we actually didn't lose. We won. Those explosives were bad. They were on a field goal drive. Patriots had a lot of field goal drives that they gave up. I was not as concerned about the run defense, even though it was worse than I expected, much worse. I didn't think Seattle would be able to run the ball at all. Shadow Kenneth Walker. It was more of the pass rush and the missed tackles that, to me, were the reason that they lost, despite holding JSN to 27 receiving yards.
Yeah, I guess my one thing with the run game is because of the explosives, it allowed them to keep canning it off, even when they were, as we've talked about, like the 1 and 2 yards, you could survive it because every fifth run he's going to go for 20 or 30, like whatever the case may be. And the hope, I think, was not the they wanted to make him one-dimensional. They wanted to put as much as humanly possible on Sam Darnold. And because Walker was able to get loose and get skinny and bust a few of those plays, maybe they stuck with it a little bit longer. They even got a good run from a good run from Halani. Your point about the missed tackles, 18. Yeah, I don't count missed. I don't go back and tally missed tackles. There was one on the Halani check down. I think he made 4 guys miss, including 3 guys miss because I think Christian Ellis missed them twice. So maybe that helps skew the numbers a little bit, but they just like on offense, they didn't win one-on-ones. Kayvon Chason, who's just been an absolute rock star in the postseason, I think one of his 2 pressures was unblocked. So, okay, they had 30 plus dropbacks and you have one win, one pressure. That wasn't going to cut it. It didn't cut it. Harold Landry again was limited in terms of the number of snaps. I think he had 1 pressure. We know Anthony Jennings, that's not his bag, but he did get blown out a couple times in run plays. So it just didn't win enough. Those guys, I think I talk about the interior, but as a group, that group needed to dominate, and they didn't dominate.
No, they did not. Kind of a no-show from Christian Barmore.
Yeah.
Didn't love that.
Yeah. Interesting guy for a conversation later in the offseason.
Oh, all right. I almost just want to speed ahead. Let me go through all my notes, and I will just give you the quick hits because I'm sure people who clicked on the episode about off-season plans would also like us to speed ahead. But as far as the other defensive part goes, I thought it was a really well-called game by Zach Core, regardless of that, because, as I said maybe 100 times last week, cat and mouse game, in these different matchups and different decisions whether to blitz and then show and set something up later. And I think your point about the run game is an excellent one because, the one touchdown they gave up was a play action pass, and the play action pass powers a lot of what Seattle does with, certainly throwing touchdowns, but they're explosives. And they had two main runs in this game. Their outside zone stuff, which everyone knows they love. Clint Kubiak, son of Gary Kubiak, is just like one of the higher branches off of the Shanahan tree. And Patriots did a really good job against that outside zone. But when they would run the outside zone, it was often towards the tight end side. And so A.J. Barner comes in motion left to right. And Jack Gibbons looks and says, as they snap the ball and everyone's going in that direction, here it comes again. And there goes Barner right by him to the end zone, untouched. So it's the motion part that I think they did well to mix up their fronts, where it wasn't always we're gearing up for the outside zone. Because they got hit at another play, the first explosive by Kenneth Walker, was G lead, frontside guard, pulls around, and everyone else is kind of going horizontally, but that extra blocker got the chase on, and then Walker got around the edge. You couldn't stay in one defense like we all know they did against the Rams in the previous Super Bowl, right? That short-circuited that outside zone game. Zach Core bounced back and forth between these fronts. He had a backup inside linebacker bust in a play-action throw. Otherwise, the pressure got to Darnold. Darnold just didn't break. And that, to me, is probably the last note that we should end on, because Maye cracked under that pressure, and part of it was his fault. A lot of it was not. Structurally, matchups up front. Darnold had the same exact snap to throw time. Took 1 sack. Maye had 6. And he only even scrambled once. So this isn't like you need to be mobile to have sack avoidance. You just need to be able to turn negative plays into neutral ones and move on. And he did.
Yeah, I mean, shook out of a couple sacks. One of them, he nearly had the long, was the broken play where he had JSN. He just overthrew him by a touch on the scramble, which was a hard throw. It was hard to get his feet set. But early on, he put some balls in harm's way or close to it. And he just, again, I think that their process going into this was we're gonna get him and he's gonna give us some. And we've taken advantage of this here in the postseason and late in the year, and that's just going to continue. And it didn't, whether it's Marcus Jones on the first little outcut out of the slot, this Barner close. Gonzalez should have had one. Like there were multiple. Carlton Davis undercut a route and got a piece of it in the red zone. Like they just needed a couple of those. And who knows? Because I'm not sitting here telling you Sam played a great game. I don't think he did. I think he was below average, but they didn't get the turnovers. So you never really turned him into the biggest puddle he could be. You only had him sweating a little bit, and it never fully formed. And that, they were relying on that. They thought they could do that, and they didn't. They didn't get it.
No, they did not. I said it's where we should end. There are 2 players we should shout out, and the second one will lead us into a couple quick hit topics. Craig Woodson, 10 tackles, 3 TFLs, 2 pass breakups. I think anyone watching that game live was like, oh, who's 31? Mm-hmm. And a couple of those tackles saved more explosives on Kenneth Walker runs in the backfield, which was a really good job by him. But he was also caught in the trash on that 30-yarder that I just referenced that got that field goal drive started for Seattle. So, I'm really encouraged by what I saw from Craig Woodson this postseason. It was not maybe the all-pro performance that social media would have you believe, but overall encouraged, and he deserves a shout out because, again, some players, I don't think Robert Spillane played all that great. Christian Barmore didn't, and you need to be strong up the middle as a good defense. He was the best piece up the middle for them, I thought.
He reminded me of Kyle Duggar. Strong against the run, physical, going forward, just an absolute. He was kind of a beast, and that was not just this past game. It's been multiple weeks now of that for him in the postseason. But he's one of the pass breakups you referenced, he was beat, and Sam Darnold hit him in the back with a throw. It was a late throw, and it was underthrown. That's an area he still needs to get better at, and that's we never saw Kyle really get better at that. So that would be my thing for him. But I love the physicality. I love the energy that he plays with, and he was a positive for this team.
He was. And I agree with you on the Darnold piece. I told that to someone in the front office at halftime, which for people who don't know, some of those guys sit in the press box with us. So it's not like, going to pal around secretly in the hallway. It just was he's like, what is going on?
Yeah.
He's going to throw you one. You're getting home. And I was wrong. Quick hitters. We did the Will Campbell conversation. The second player on defense I want to shout out was Christian Gonzalez. He is eligible for an extension.
Yeah.
Carlton Davis said any day now. Full-throated endorsement. He should be the highest paid corner in football soon, either by total guarantees or total money. Anything to add on that front?
No, he helped shift the conversation because I think we had a conversation at one point. We were like, and then as Vrabel has referenced, sort of a switch went on in that Baltimore game, and he loved the way he played after that. And I would concur with the way he played after that. And it wasn't, he should have given up a touchdown. Like I get Darnold had JSN on the post and he on the one down by the goal line. And I threw it slightly behind him and Christian recovered and got a pass breakup. But like he was really good. He was their best player, period. End of story. Offense, defense, he was their best player. And he certainly made his case.
3 pass breakups, 1 catch allowed. That'll do.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, Witherspoon's also going to be up for an extension. And I've compelled the Patriots to sign Gonzalez before Witherspoon signs with Seattle. And they're very different players. But I just think there's something there of, the market is going to tell you what it is. And his agents know that. So I'm sure they're pressing for a number higher, get it done sooner, just acquiesce. And they'll find the middle ground. I expect it to get done. We'll see. That number, though, will be north of $30 million per year and probably north of $90 million guaranteed.
Yeah.
And he deserves it. He's not even 24 yet. Premium player, premium position. Speaking of free agency, 2 more quick hitters. This is the first. Jalen Hawkins, Kairos Tonga, K'Lavon Chaisson. Understanding Chaisson will be more expensive than the other 2. Probably Hawkins and Tonga. Who's your top priority to keep, re-sign?
That's a good question. I would have given Tonga an extension during the year. I think we even floated that on this program. That didn't happen. I don't like the way he played and / got beat up down the stretch. So I'm a little bit more leery in terms of what's there, what's lingering. But if I can get him for the number I was talking about, I think we were 2-10, 2-12. We were somewhere in that ballpark. I would do that. I guess I'd say Chaisson over Hawkins. And he's going to get paid more money than he's probably worth. Even though he's sort of come into his own as a player, he's still a liability as a run defender. Although, again, as we said, he got better at it, at least in the postseason. And maybe that's just the effort. You're getting closer to the end. But what's the number there? Like, what's a number that makes you go, and they have money. It's not like I'm not trying to save them money. I don't give a rat's ass about their money. They've got money. They can pay money to, as we've seen with the cap, you can do whatever the hell you want, basically. That's not how they operate. But like, what's the number where you start to go, I don't think we want to do that. And I don't know. I don't know what that number is. I guess in my head, I'm thinking like if it's 15, I'm not doing 15 a year for him.
That's the number that came to mind as I get over and under. Because the case for Chaisson is not only that he's still, I think, 26, if not turning 27 soon.
Yeah, 27 soon, I think.
Obviously just had the best year of his career. What are your options after him? An old Harold Landry, Elijah Ponder, who flashed at times, okay. Anthony Jennings, who went from, not fit for the scheme to like, okay, we really need you. And there are other players that will be available. We'll talk about in a second. But, he's someone works, someone who fit inside the locker room. You took a chance on, could develop, and maybe there's a way to structure 2-3 year deal, that really is a year shorter than it comes off. However you need to get it done. But I think that number will get north of 15. And it's tough because he's bounced around. Of course he wants to settle down somewhere he likes and where he's respected and good. And I asked him about it after the game, and he gave stock answer, smile on his face, just kind of like, everyone knows he wants to be here, but you can't miss your chance at the most money possible. And it might not be in New England. Last one, Terrell Williams and Zach Core.
Yeah.
It's a tricky situation because Mike Vrabel did not commit to one or the other as a defensive coordinator next year and said they had a lot to consider.
Yeah.
By
the way, that was his most surprising answer.
Yeah.
Everything that came out on Tuesday, that was the one that made me go, oh, okay. Because I've been under the assumption that that's Terrell's job. He didn't, a lot of unforeseen circumstances, health related, and that I thought that his job would be his job when he was back. And, he's gotten full clearance, as Mike said. I just thought that that would be the way it would go. But he did leave the door open there for sure.
So if I had to guess, and this is said as someone who sat down with Terrell and the cancer's cured and he's still
Terrific story, by the way. Shout you out.
He did not reveal, came very close to revealing what the first medical incident was that he had last spring. It's unrelated, not tied to the cancer whatsoever. And he came back from, he was there at training camp, had one day where he was dehydrated and at least went to the ground. He also had an issue at media night on Monday. Where I believe he had to sit down in the middle of some interviews. And to me, speculating, but I think it's a fair question to go, okay, there's cleared medically to come into the office.
Mm-hmm.
But what about working 70 to 80-hour weeks for 6, 7, 8 months in a row? That's a different type of endurance. And pending whatever that first medical incident was, it might have sapped him of some of that endurance. And I think they just need to figure that out because Vrabel, of course, as close as he is with Terrell, and this is not like, the coach speak, lip service, blah, 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 really cares about him as a person.
Yeah.
So they might just say, man, we need you to be all in. If your health won't let you do that, why don't we slide you into a defensive consultant or senior assistant type of role? Or you split it with Zach, but Zach does more of the work. That to me is probably what they're deciding on if I had to guess, _guess. Because Zach did a great job, and it is Terrell's job. But I don't know if his health will allow that, and that's probably what they're figuring out.
Yeah, and I hate to you did the deep dive. I hate to speculate on the health thing. He struggled physically even back to his time in Tennessee, and we're not even talking about related to this. He's a very big man. I think I could see clearly because of the chemo. I mean, that saps you of a lot of your juice. I could see that being part of what contributed to him not feeling awesome on Monday night and having to take a seat. But it is a great point, and it's almost like there's a deeper conversation to be had between Terrell's family and his friends, his close friends, about what are you doing here? Like, you just saw how precious life is, and you survived this scare. Do you really want to put your body out there and 70, as you mentioned, 70 80 hours a week? Is that good for you at this stage of your life, especially what you're coming off of? But it's hard because this is what he's done. It's his life, man. Like, I mean, his family's his life, but football's his life too. And that's when you're 51, 52 years old and someone says like, I don't know that you should do this anymore. They're making a decision for you that you're probably not ready to make.
Yeah. And who knows? They're not there yet.
But we got time.
Vrabel said they'll figure it out. They got a lot to weigh. That's one factor of a few. Maybe he keeps it. Zach gets a passing game coordinator role, some kind of promotion, acknowledgement of leading the defense.
Also, just an awesome relationship between those two men.
Yeah. Yes.
Which I detailed in Boston Sports Journal, just the level of respect. And as they both said, it's like family. It's not, like it goes beyond friendship. They talk to each other at least once a week when Zach was an assistant in New York with the Giants last year and Terrell was the D-line coach in Detroit. Like that, just there's a bond there between those two men that may make whatever has to happen here, if there is a reducing of roles or reconfiguring, would make it maybe a little bit easier and more palatable for Terrell.
Yeah, and Terrell was around. Like, he was never gone for a full extended stretch. It was just a couple hours here, a couple hours there, sat in on some of Zach's meetings in the back. Anyway, read the story if you want to know more. Okay, it's finally time to talk offseason. And we might only have time to talk about free agent needs for a quick dad pod. Let me have it. Offensively, they need more explosion. Mm-hmm. They need guys where you get them the ball and they can do the rest. It does not need to be perfect from read to route to protection. And they had a lot of great explosive plays, and that was cool. Kayshon Boutte, I don't know if you can rely on that pinpoint deep passing again for anybody as good as Drake was. Mm-hmm. I think what you'd rather have is someone with that contested catch ability like Kayshon Boutte, plus the yak, breaking tackles, zipping through secondaries. Like Pop Douglas caught an 8-yard pass in the Super Bowl, made a man miss. They're like, oh, that's what that looks like. Mm-hmm. But you can't rely on Pop in that kind of way. The big name is going to be Alec Pierce. We don't have to go through all the free agents, but that's the type of profile where Vrabel loves the contested catch guys. And I'm just going, you need guys with speed, burst, acceleration. And right now, it's like you said, the two rookies that you don't really trust. Like that to me, this game, great defenses. We need to just get the ball in the hands of our great players, because what they'll do is make up for the fact that we're kind of at a deficit in other places.
And Pierce is a freaky, explosive athlete, and he's sort of only been used in one way for Indy. And I guess knowing what he's going to get paid, which is to say well north of $20 million a year.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think there's any, and he might even get franchised by Indy, who, depending on what they do with Michael Pittman and his contract. But that might be one where you go, as much as you like Kayshawn and he's shown you this level of competitiveness, you might go look at it and go, well, we're going to have to pay Kayshawn probably $10 million a year, somewhere in that neighborhood. Like, when he's up, do we want to just spend 24 on Pierce and get the freaky explosive athlete if they project him to do a little bit more than that? Which, again, as I said, that's not something that Indy did a lot of him with. He did more this year than he has in the past, but he's mostly been just you go stretch the field. It's just that he stretches the field like a boss. And if you combine that with the way Drake threw the deep ball, maybe that's something that's attractive to them. I guess the other thing I would say with this, and you mentioned Pop, is, and I know there's a lot of, again, hope on the Efton Chisholm aspect of this and people hoping that he's the next Welker, Edelman, Troy Brown. I don't know that he has the speed for it and the quickness. Like, not to say that he's not quick, but that's another one where if you're committed to Josh as the OC, I'm looking for somebody better there. I'm looking for someone I trust more in that spot. And it's clear that they didn't trust Pop a ton in that role. And I don't know why that would change. So is there a different turn there, instead of, okay, let's bring Booty back, not Chase Pierce, but we need to find that quick, explosive guy in the slot that we didn't have this year, or that we have but we don't trust.
So then you're kicking Diggs to the Z receiver spot.
Well, I'm still not certain he's on the team.
And that was my next point. Are we 100% sure that Stefon Diggs is a New England Patriot next season?
I am not. And again, this might, in fact, in some ways tie into Pierce, just because of if you're really going to go all in, like I said, that's going to be expensive. I don't think they're going to pay Pierce $25 million. And what's Diggs at 20 this coming year?
Yeah, I mean, the cap hit is obviously very different than the guaranteed salary. The cap hit is 26.5.
Yeah,
his
not
base is just over 20 million, but the guarantees are 1.7. So no one on either side of this negotiation between Diggs and the Patriots is looking and going, yeah, this is fine. Diggs is going, we're upping my guarantees. I just had your first 1,000 yard season since the COVID pandemic. They're going, well, we're definitely not keeping you at this number. And if we cut you, it's okay. It's like just under 10 in dead money, but we free up 16.8 in cap savings. This negotiation is going to be fascinating. I agree with you. It's not a guarantee. I would put it as likely. Don't get me wrong, but you also
I'm leaning more towards the unlikely.
Wow.
I mean, 47% stays, 53 goes, something like that. I just think it's more of that's a really nuanced conversation. And again, what did they see from him in the last 4 weeks in the postseason when it really got sticky? Like, am I really going to give that guy, even if you rework the guarantees, like, because you said they're not paying him 20 and 26 on the cap, that's not happening. So if he's staying, that number is going to have to come down. Obviously for him, the guarantee is going to come up and he's going to want a little longer commitment. I don't know. I don't have a great feeling about that. I think if they were being smart, they'd look at his past history and say, yeah, year one always tends to be great. What happens in year 2 and year 3? And do we want to attach ourselves to that at 32, going on 33, when you're hoping and expecting to play in January again, when he just disappeared this January? And oh, by the way, in Buffalo, he disappeared in January too.
So put the history aside, because I know some people are hearing this and they're like, digging their claws or whatever they're grasping now, a grocery cart or a weight at the gym or just, the side of the couch. This is not personal. Look at this from a football standpoint. Again, going on 33, had 110 yards in the playoffs as your number one guy. Plays the slot receiver position where you also have Pop Douglas and Efton Chisholm. If he wants a lot more money, wouldn't you sell high on that type of guy? The big holdup I have is what a flag bearer he was for Mike Vrabel and this culture and this team, which alone is not going to get Mike to be, sappy about this or precious about it, because he's got the whole locker room under his will and his vision. But there's something to be said for you lose that guy in that room. Who's filling the void? Matt Collins does his own thing. Kayshon Boutte's more mature. That's cool. They're a little bit redundant as I see it in their skill sets. And you don't have a guy in Diggs that had such a connection with Maye that I have no idea where this goes. But I do think it's a good question to bring up, because it's not a guarantee that he'll be back, because they've got reasons to part ways. He's got reasons to say, I want more money, and they're totally justified. Can they meet in the middle?
Yeah. Well, so just based on your feeling, what number makes sense?
For who?
Well, you've got to find the middle ground. So, like, what number, if you're the team, what's what we were talking about with Chase on, where do you draw the line and say, I'm not paying, we know you're not paying him this. What he's on the books for coming this year, I can't see any way in hell they pay him that. So how are you reworking that, where you're obviously going to have to up guarantees, but what's the number that makes sense for both sides? Because it's not just a one thing, but where you as a team go, I'm not paying you that, man. I can't, I'm never mind. I'm not paying you what you're already on the books for, but we've reworked this thing and we're talking and you're at a number we just can't get to. We're not going to do it. And we're going to take the dead cap hit and we're going to move on.
I mean, the tough part is you don't know if he's chasing average annual value relative to other receivers in the league, the total number that's fake because it's not guaranteed, or the guaranteed. Because what I would do as the team is say, we'll guarantee you a number. It's just going to be lower than what you want, but you're getting it one way or another. And so that is a solid cap hit there, but at least gives him reason to return. And let's say we'll rework this. It'll be a 1-year deal. You'll get all of your money. So that way it feels fresh in like a year one sense, but there's no risk long term. The issue is that what he would want in a 10 to 12 range?
I was going to say he's probably thinking, I just had 1,000 and I'm going to be better next year because I'm another year removed from the 15? ACL. I was guessing 15, 16.
This is off the top of my head. So, like, when you do these, obviously they're informed by, comparable players and where they are in their ages and their contracts and all this different stuff. Like, he got 16 fully guaranteed with this deal and then 22.6 in total guarantees. Obviously just got a fair amount of that in the first year, signing bonus, prorated, whatever. But the guarantees left on his deal in salary is 1.7. So there's not a whole lot, again, coming his way. If you go, we're going to offer you 8X or whatever. I mean, you could do the staring contest, but ultimately it's not like he can cut them. They can cut him. So I don't know.
Yeah. And then the agent's back channeling and going, hey, Vegas is willing to pay you 15 for a year, or I don't pick a team, and so that's the question, where I would think that if you get him to I think
speaking of Vegas, can we pivot to one more name and then we'll get out of here?
Yeah, go ahead. I was going to say, I think the number's 15-ish.
Okay. You're probably right.
You can get him for less than that. Do it.
Go ahead. Yeah. They should absolutely give up the 31st overall pick and change. If that's it, give up more for a 28-year-old dude who will walk in as the best pass rusher you've had since I don't know when, address a premium position of need, a premium position period, who's in his prime, X amount of 10 sack seasons in a row, and is a hand in glove fit for this Mike Vrabel culture that completely changes the complexity of your defense, because you don't have to now blitz all the time. You've got Maxx freaking Crosby and Milt Williams up front and Christian Gonzalez in the back end. Come on now. Cornerstone. Import him. Do it.
Nope.
Oh!
No, thank you. Wow. Not because of the talent. The talent is obvious. I think you shouldn't be fooled because, as Mike Vrabel said, we exceeded expectations this year. This was year one of a rebuild. I
Oh,
just compared the draft classes that Seattle has had since 2022 and what you've had. You have this massive void on your roster that you had to go spend 174 million guaranteed, whatever the freaking number was in free agency, because again, you didn't have enough players. You need one more draft, a good draft, and I am loath to give up multiple. I think it's going to be multiple ones. Maybe it's a 1 and a 2. I'm not there. I don't think you're there. I know it's crazy. You just went to a Super Bowl. I don't. I think you gotta. I think you gotta go through the offseason, spend money on the guys that are available, just like you did this year. Use your picks, use them wisely. Hope you have another good draft, and now you have your foundation where you want to do whatever you want to do the year after. And I know Drake and's coming up and all that different things. Again, you can do whatever the hell you want with the cap. In the here and now, I'm not there. I don't want to hear about AJ Brown either.
Oh, I don't want to hear about him, but Maxx Crosby's in the smack dab middle of his prime.
Played a
And
ton
this
of
is the contract where you can pay him for the next couple of years when Drake is on that rookie contract. And I understand your point about you want to have more draft picks. Whomever you pick at 31, this is not a top 10 pick. It's not a top 5 pick. It's not top 15. It's not top 20. This is borderline second round pick that I would absolutely ship to Vegas. And I understand it'll take something. And if you would rather give up a 2027 first, fine. Because there is a window here, not just with Maye, but the roster ready to contend and push forward. If you are going to only be in year 2 of a rebuild, you just came from the Super Bowl. If you need to get back there, you need reinforcements now to level up with the schedule that is obviously going to go up another level next season. Like this is a perfect alignment the way that I see it. Because even if you hit on that pick, that 31 is not guaranteed to be a big contributor next year.
Maxx Crosby was a 5th round pick. I mean, so like, and you know, again, it's like Brady being a 6th round pick, but like, I don't think you're good enough to just go do that yet. And it's so dumb. Like it's dumb. Is it dumb? You went to the Super Bowl, but like they admitted that this, and we heard them. You know, I know I've said it a million times because people have yelled at me for a million times. They know internally like this was happening sooner than they thought, and the roster's not where they needed to be. So,
and they were wrong.
Were they? I mean,
look, you and I talked a couple of weeks ago about don't care about the fact that you are historically probably an anomaly from a talent perspective. I understand you seeing that as reason to hold your horses and wait. To me, if Maye goes up another level, you get a year 2 leap out of Will Campbell. The thing that you need most around Maye is the explosive piece that we just talked about, which is more likely to be found with a receiver in the draft than a game-changing pass rusher, even at 31. So that's what I would take is a day 2 pick, flyer on a guy at receiver to put around Maye. Will I address the pass rush instantly like this with Maxx Crosby and Milt Williams? So again, I said complexity. I meant changes the complexion of the defense. It could be however complex that it wants to be or not. But the complexion absolutely changes. That is a cornerstone. We have to block this guy and changes everything they can do around him. Blitz or no blitz, tilting, pressures or whatever.
Question for you.
Yeah. Then we got to go.
Yeah. Do you worry at all about his play style and him being one of those guys that, as you said, he's smack dab in the middle of his prime? And my question to you be, is he? Because he plays like a maniac, and he's played like a maniac since he came in the league. And I love it. Like, don't get me wrong. Like I'm not going to sit here if they trade for him and go, they're idiots. Like, because he's capable of changing games. I just wonder about, he's played a lot of football. He's been hurt the last couple of years. Again, he still put up good numbers, but like, I'm just wondering, like, for that type of max effort player, and he is, if you watch him, he's the guy who, after the play's over, he hits Patrick Mahomes in the rib cage and pushes this guy and shoves that guy. And like, there's just this whole thing about him. And like, if he loses a piece of that explosiveness and that edge as a player, as he gets older, is he the same guy? Is he even remotely the same guy? And then you turned around and gave up multiple picks for him and paid him. If you're doing that, by the way, you're not signing Chase on. Like, I don't, no. And which, whatever, like, they're not, I'm not putting them in the same class of player because they aren't, but I'm just saying, like, that's changing some of what you do as well. It's an interesting conversation. I just would say right now I still remain in the mindset of like, you still need to build this thing out the right way, even if this year was an incredible season where you exceeded expectations and got to the biggest game of them all.
I just have to say, I thought I was running out of gas here at the end of the episode. I'm still very tired. You made me look never better in this podcast by advocating against the big trade for a star pass rusher.
Oh, shiny! I didn't think you would.
I understand your reasoned argument. That's not landing reasonable on the ears of our dear listeners and viewers. Look, this is my fault.
I don't do it for. I'm thinking about the football team here.
I have to go.
Go.
We will do Dad Pod. And let me have it. Though this, I just thank you. I have nothing to complain about. Thank you for doing this at the end. Next time, which I don't know when that'll be. Maybe whenever you want to come back. But the season's over. This weekly arrangement's done. But I'll be bugging you, and you are welcome anytime.
I'm going to say that your let me have it is just the quick dismissal of my Maxx Crosby take. So
Again,
that was such a you know what that was?
Good right now.
Why don't you just go, where's Taylor? He always has that shot of Elliott Wolf with the red laser eyes. Why don't you just go tweet that now? Ooh, shiny. Just not there.
Don't tell him I'm mad. Don't put it in the newspaper. I'm mad. That's Mike Giardi. All right. Thank you, pal.
Thank you, buddy.